Hi, and welcome to another episode of Incorrect's Corner. Today we're going to discuss the Gospel reading for the fifth Sunday of Lent in the Roman Catholic liturgy. Again, the reading for this week is a little too long for me to read on air, so if you want to follow along at home, you can find the story of the resurrection of Lazarus, the Holy Gospel according to John, chapter 11, verse 1 through 45. The Gospel reading opens with this statement. It's very profound. It's not going to seem like it. Now a man was ill, Lazarus from Bethany, the village of Mary, and her sister Martha. Just think about that statement for a second. Now a man was ill. What does that mean? In this time frame, being ill was next to death, which is the most horrific thing that could happen to you, because death was the end. There was nothing else. Illness was kind of the doorstep for the end. So it was a big deal, and that's why we opened the Gospel reading with this. This particular reading is where Jesus goes and visits Lazarus, who's a sick man, who's a friend of the family, and he goes and visits him with his disciples. He stays for 2 days, and he's just ill. Nothing's happening. It's not getting worse, not getting better. So Jesus says, this is just an illness. It's not death, so I will go. So he goes to continue his ministry. And nobody stops him. Nobody says, no, wait, hold up. Stick around for a little bit longer. They just let him go. He goes. Lazarus passes away. His sister Mary tracks him down and says, Jesus, it's all your fault. If you had been there, my brother would still be alive. But because you weren't, he died. There's a lot that we can pull from this. First off, why is Mary so upset? Well, like we said just a bit ago, death is the end for the Jewish people. In the afterlife, they go to a place called Sheol, and it's just a place where the dead congregate. There's no paradise, there's no holy afterlife, there's no heaven. It's just a place where souls go as a final resting place. It's the end of life, and life for the Jewish people, that's where it's all at. That's where you receive blessing from God. That's where you receive favor from God. You don't get any more of that after your death. Mary's right to be upset that her brother had passed away. But why is she upset? She's not upset because it's the end of her life. She's upset because she believed it's Jesus' fault. That if he had taken a different course of action, he'd still be alive. Death in this story represents something else for us. Not just the end of life, but death is the cutting off from God. The total cutting off from God. Clear back with Adam and Eve, the story in Genesis where Eve takes a bite of the apple and offers it to Adam. They together commit original sin, which, for all sakes and purposes, gets them kicked out of the Garden of Eden, which is, in the biggest sense, a disconnect from God. It's the beginning of illness, the beginning of pain, the beginning of sin, and the lack of paradise, the lack of communion with God, and the start of death. Sin starts all things that end in death. And Lazarus here is representative of that sin. Those of us who have sinned cut ourselves completely off from God. And until we mend our ways, we can't rebuild that bridge. Jesus, in this sense, was waiting for somebody to rebuild that bridge. He went and visited for 2 days. It's like somebody who would come to your house and knock on the door continuously for 2 days, and nobody lets them in. So they say, well, we'll just go somewhere else. Nobody stops them. So there's a statement in this gospel reading that I really like. It says Jesus was perturbed. Jesus doesn't take flack from people. He's not a welcome man. He doesn't let people walk all over him. If it's somebody's fault, he wants you to own up to it. If it's somebody's responsibility, you need to take responsibility for your actions. But here, Jesus is not responsible for this. It's the responsibility of each individual, you and me, to take care of ourselves spiritually. We're the ones who are supposed to approach God and ask for forgiveness. We're the ones who are supposed to approach God and ask for the things that we need. And we're the ones who are supposed to approach God and say thank you for everything He's given us. If we are the ones that wait for Jesus to come and find us, it's not going to happen, folks, because that's not the way God operates. God waited for Lazarus or Mary or somebody to say, no, stay at this house, stay with us. And nobody did. And when he left, it was a complete and total disconnect with God. God went one way, they went the other. Jesus went back with them anyways because she pleaded and pleaded and pleaded, and he finally said, okay, you've asked, I will return. Lazarus is not dead. He's just sleeping. And they said, well, he's been dead for 3.5 days. It's not possible he's sleeping. It's like, do you doubt the word of God? So not only are you coming here to blame me for not stopping his death, now you're telling me I don't know what I'm talking about. You know, it's one thing for us to plead with God for something that we need. But if we start to doubt him as soon as we start pleading, why did we ask him in the first place? So Jesus shows up and says to Lazarus, rise. And everybody's like, yeah, right, like that's going to happen. And all of a sudden, out comes Lazarus with all of his bandages on. Jesus says, untie that man, he is risen. Jesus has shown us that, number one, if we're a sinner, which we all are, it is our responsibility to fix that sin. We have to go to God and say, look, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. Step number two is we have to make sure that we hold on to God, that we don't send him packing, that we invite him into our house. Number three, that we give credit where credit is due, that we don't take credit for God's actions, and we don't blame him for things that aren't his fault, but our own fault. And number four, probably the thing that we forget the most, something we need to focus on during the season of Lent, is saying thank you. How many times do we say thank you, not only to God, but to those of us around us, the people, our friends and family that give us so much? So we need to, these are the four things that we need to work on this week. Number one, again, we need to look at ourselves, our sin, and fix it ourselves. We need to start walking towards God, because that's the only way that we can take care of these things. And number two, we need to not doubt God whenever we ask for that help. And number three, we have to give credit where credit is due. And number four, say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. With that, that's been another episode of In Crick's Corner. I hope you have a great time.